At the beginning of a module, we first remind you where you're going in this course by reviewing the course map. The blue highlights your progress within the course. And second, we like to zoom into the module itself and show you the topics we're going to cover within this module. This process map reveals the numbers of topics we'll cover inside this module. You are currently on the first of our module topics. Now, let's join our teacher for this topic.
All right, product research. Now, we've been talking about coffee, but just from the basic product research, we kind of wanted to drill down on, what coffee would taste like coming from different areas of the world. Many persons would say, so how do you know it's coming from Ethiopia? How do you know this is a Caribbean bean? Or, how do you know? That's usually, if you go through on the detailed page of any of these products, you will see that information there. But because you're trading the coffee, you want to know your product. You want to know what you're selling. Now, in Central America, there is a particular climate. And because of the altitude and this climate, the coffees are like, you have a very similar taste. And it's more fruity. It has fruit-like characteristics. And they're often referred to as that coffee balance. Now, many persons will hear the coffee connoisseurs refer to profile of the coffee. So that really tells you what kind of coffee it is, whether it's a bit fruity, whether it's chocolatey, whether it's nutty. It's just telling you the profile of the coffee. And your target audience, as we spoke about before, you want to know what kind of product you're selling to them. Some persons like a medium coffee because they want a rich flavor. Others like it light. They don't just need a hint of coffee just to keep them rolling. But then you have others who are much more interested in a very dark bean that's oily, and they want the kick. They want that strong coffee because they want to stay up at night for research or whatever. But many persons have different ways of liking the coffee. So it's good for you, a potential coffee trader on a large scale, to know what you're selling, because your audience will demand certain things from you, and you need to know. You need to know that so you can be able to talk, positively. You will be able to talk in an educated way on all of this. Now, South America, in Colombia, they're like the third top producing country in the world. Their coffee is described, it has a mellow acidity and a little caramel sweetness, and sometimes with this nutty undertone. So it gives you all of those hints when you're drinking it. And I'll give you a quick story. Once I went to a coffee roaster, and I was actually making some coffee for myself. I was actually at the factory and I was making some coffee for myself. And he came out to me and he's like, oh, you are Barrington. You purchase a lot of coffee from us. And I'm like, yeah. And I said, okay. So I see you're making he said to me, I see you're making some coffee here. Why are you using sugar? And I was baffled because I thought if you're making coffee, that's what you're used to. You're accustomed to making your coffee, putting some sugar in there. He's like, no, you're not able to tell. You're not able to get the real flavor of the coffee if you put the sugar in there. I mean, some people like their coffee with sugar. But he said, okay, I'm going to make you a special pot of coffee. So he made the coffee, came back out, and he's like, here you go, have this. When I was drinking that coffee, I actually appreciated what he was saying. You started to taste the chocolate and the caramel and the nut, and you're like, wow, that was an experience like nothing else. Ever since that day, I probably don't use sugar in the coffee anymore because I had no idea. I mean, you learn these things along the way, but I had no idea, zero idea, that the coffee would bring out all of these different flavors. And they go through a special process that they call cupping. And cupping is where it tells you where the coffee is from. A connoisseur can tell you that, okay, this is a Colombian because of the flavor that it has, that hints of this, hints of that. They can, pretty much give you a good idea that where that coffee comes from. So Colombia, being the third top producing country in the world, it's kind of that sweet and medium bodied coffee. And it's most easily recognized by someone in US or Canada. They know that, oh, this is Colombian coffee. And you have popular coffee, in like Folgers is a Brazilian coffee. And if you ever drink Folgers, you know, oh, this is the Folgers taste because of the flavor, because of that profile that it has. Now, the Brazilian coffee, Brazil is a #1 producer in the world. They have the largest area, they produce the most coffee in the world. It's more of a peanutty and heavy-bodied taste, and their beans are usually used in espresso. Espresso is that darker coffee. what is interesting about this kind of coffee is that taste usually lingers on the palate. So, you have some coffee, you'll drink it, and it's fine. You can pretty much cleanse your palate real quickly. But with this kind of coffee from Brazil, the espresso kind of coffee, it lingers on the palate. Now, coffee from another continent. Let's jump over to Ethiopia. They have different processes in Ethiopia when they're trying to harvest their coffee. So it's the naturals is heavy, fruity, and wine-like, and then you have a washed coffee that has more floral or tea-like flavor. So there are different hints of coffee. The connoisseurs, as I said, they can tell you these things like right off the bat. This is exactly where this coffee is from. But just educating you guys, give you guys a little information of where the coffee is from and what kind of flavor you're to expect from different regions is something that is going to serve you very well, especially when you're going into like the coffee fest and you're talking to all these guys who have coffee from all over the world. When you talk to someone in their coffee language, I can tell you it makes a big difference to close that sale. I can tell you. They will just tell right off the bat, oh, this guy is new to the coffee, doesn't know too much. But once you can talk at least something like what kind of beans are those Arabica beans? Are those Robusta beans? They know that you know what you're asking about. So it's a totally different conversation. Another coffee that you may have heard of is the Indonesian Sumatra coffee. These take the dark roasting well. And we're going to be showing you the beans moving forward. These take the dark roasting very well. So they're very smokier. They have like a toasted flavor. So persons love that kick to their coffee. They want the strong coffee to keep them up. They're usually going to be, okay, let me get some of that Sumatra. So it's kind of, it gives you that like unsweetened cocoa kind of flavor. So it's great to know these coffee profiles again. Now we go to acidity levels. Now what our research shows is anything between 5 and 7 are acceptable, the acidity of the coffee. Now coffee, there are different flavors indicating that some had a darker roast. And if you look on this chart that we have over here, it gives you a kind of indication of what the acidity level is. So if it's a pH 5, it's kind of black coffee. The pH 7, pure water, you have different levels of acidity here on this chart. And that's the same with the coffee. There are different levels. And the regular that we usually work with is between 5 and 7. Those are acceptable levels of acidity to work with. So the darker roasted coffee will have less acidity. The medium roast is right where you want it to be, that 5 to 7 range, and then you have the lighter roast. Now, if the coffee beans are harvested too early, it may have higher acidity. And these, when you go to a cupping session, like with those baristas, they can tell you. I mean, I sat down one day and I brought some coffee from Hawaii and I gave it to the roaster and he was able to just brew it and he could tell you right away, oh, these coffee, this didn't get to the perfect ripeness. And I'm like, wow, how could they tell that? But they're passionate about coffee. And one thing that he said to me, and I'm passing that on to you, you have to love coffee, to continue doing coffee. It's like, it's a business. When you get into it, you start to love it. The more you start to get into it, the more you love coffee because it's just a wonderful product to trade because people have to consume it every single day. It's just that easy. Moving on to our next slide, let's look at the different roasts. Now, we have the roast here on the right. You kind of see the grinds and, you notice this one is a little darker, then this one is lighter, and this one is kind of medium tone. So they're different tones, but all of these are really medium roasted. Now, what are the characteristics of a light roast? Now, the light roast, they'll be lighter in color. There will be no oils on the bean. And again, it's good to know what other names they are referenced by. So for a light roast, if you're going into Target or Kmart to pick up coffee and you see something that says Light City, Half City, Cinnamon, New England, those terms are referring to light roasted coffee. So that's just another terminology for light roasted coffee. Now, when you get to the medium roast, they're medium brown in color and it has that flavor. That's where you get the real flavor out of coffee, in the medium roast, to get that flavor out. It's non-oily. And it's preferred in the US. That's usually the most popular grind that you're going to find, medium roasted coffee. Most people prefer medium roasted. You will have those who are like, hey, do you have a dark roast that we can get? But for the most part, when you're trading coffee, when you're selling coffee, medium roasted coffee is going to be the one that works best for you. And they are referred to as breakfast blend, city, American. So that reference again will let you know, oh, they're referring to medium roasted coffee. So again, different terminology that they use when referring to different kinds of coffee. And if you know these, it just helps you in that conversation. And we have a half city roast. You know, what's that? You don't want to be puzzled. You want to know, oh, you mean a light roast. Okay, so there you go. But as I just mentioned, medium roasted coffee is the one that is mostly consumed in the US. That's what we have experienced, and that's what this research has shown. Now, we get into a hybrid kind of a medium roast, medium dark roast. It has a rich dark color with some oil and slight bitter aftertaste. That's usually referred to as the city. And then you have the dark roast. Once you get into the dark roast, when you take the beans up, you can just see that it's oily. It has an oily external to it. And what's the biggest characteristic of the dark roast is that bitter aftertaste. So if you went to Starbucks and you get a cup of coffee and it has that bitter aftertaste, maybe it's just a regular dark roast, then you know, okay, this is a dark roasted coffee. The lighter or medium roast will give you the flavor. The dark roast gives you that bitter aftertaste and also gives you that kick. Now, other names that dark roast coffee is referred to, it will be high, continental, espresso, European, New Orleans, Italian, or French. So these are just other names that the dark roast coffee is known as. Now, let us talk about the two kinds of beans that are most popularly consumed, the Robusta and the Arabica. The caffeine content in the Robusta bean is about 2.7%. It kind of tastes a little burnt or rubbery. The green beans are usually about half the price of the Arabica because, you know, what we see is Robusta makes up about 25% of the coffee cultivation. It's more commonly found in instant grind. It's just one that you just need instant, your water, and some sugar, and you're ready to go. That's what we refer to as instant coffee. The others, you need to use that drip method, or use it in, maybe you have a Keurig or a pot that you make it with. So Robusta is easier to tend to and more resistant to insect due to high acidity. So that's some of the major characteristics of the Robusta. Now we jump over to the most popular type of bean cultivated throughout the world, and that's the Arabica. The caffeine content is about 1.5. It has twice the sugar, and the acid content is between 5 to 5.8%. But the big thing is right here. It's 75% of coffee cultivation. 75% of coffee around the world is in the form of Arabica coffee. So, these are just the two types of coffee and how much is produced worldwide. All right, guys, here is a good picture of both of the beans that we just spoke about. Remember, the Arabica is 75% of the world's coffee population, and then the Robusta is 25%. But if you look at the beans, you can see that this one, the Arabica, is larger, the Robusta. So the bean shape and size tells you what kind of bean it is. And these are just good things to know, good little tips to know, because as I said, if you're interested and you're coming to the Coffee Fest, this will be great when you're actually seeing the beans live, you know what you're selling. It makes a ton of difference.